Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Multiply You podcast. My name is Austin Clark. I host it. Today, like always, we've got just an incredible guest, Taylor Wilstead. He is the president and owner of Bonding Solutions. I'm really excited to be able to introduce him, to have him share some of the things that he's learned and gained with his experience over really the last 2-3 decades or so. As always, this podcast and this episode is brought to you by Moxie Pest Control. One of our main focuses right now, it's growth. It always has been. I think that it always will be. We certainly want it to be the right kind of growth. We grow just the same ways that everyone does. We grow with traditional marketing channels like direct mailers and special offers. We grow via social media and social offerings, direct sales. One of the ways the last couple of years that we've been experiencing a lot of success is growth via acquisition. And it's been interesting, the market, not just in Phoenix for pest control companies, but nationally, it is mostly made up of 2, 3, 4, 5 person type shops. And as I'm learning more, a lot of them don't have really a plan of what retirement looks like. And so we've been able to step in. I think that we found a really neat way to help owners that are interested to be able to transition from doing it to doing more golf or vacations. So anyone that's listening, if you know anybody that kind of fits that mold, that category is specifically in the Phoenix or Arizona market, get them in contact with me. They can call me directly or text me at 480-254-9730. It's my cell. They can also email me directly at aclark@moxiepestcontrol.com. Don't submit a form on our national site. It'll go to our national team. I'll never see it. But I'd love to be able to get to know some of those people and see if there might be a fit. Now, we've got Taylor Wilstead here from Bonding Solutions. Taylor and we've kind of known each other on and off the last several years. I think we both kind of run around with some of the same sorts of people. What he is doing and the growth that he is experiencing, it is incredible. And so I'm excited for him to be able to talk more about that. Growing up in Arizona and with family in the surety industry, Taylor was practically born into surety. After pursuing a degree in business, Taylor jumped right into surety, working for Bonding Solutions since 2003. Coming up on 20 years, man. That's a long time. Yeah, almost there. He started his career currying bonds for the agency. Since that time, Taylor has assisted in the growth of the agency, stepped into an ownership role, and developed a successful platform for nationwide surety offerings. Aside from agency management, Taylor focuses and specializes in contract bonds and services hundreds of contractors and developers in the Southwest and nationwide. Taylor, thanks for being on. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Appreciate that kind introduction. We're doing well. Glad it's not hot in Arizona yet, and we're still plugging along at Bonding Solutions. So thank you for having us on today.
Yeah, of course. We need to remember these days when it's 75 outside, because in a month or two it's going to be 175 outside, and we need to remind ourselves that there was a time that it wasn't so hot. So we didn't talk about this before. Maybe we can. Your closest friends call you Sumo. Right. That's what is that? What is that? Where did that come from? So, is that something, do you like that? Is that something you're wanting to shake, or where did that come from?
I want to shake it. I hate it. I'm 39. It happened in 4th grade. I've just had a bunch of mean friends my whole life. That's what it comes out to. No, it was funny. I was at my friend's house when I was in 4th grade, and we were just, I don't even remember what we were doing, but his name was Toothpick as a nickname. My name was Sumo as a nickname, like a stupid name, just out of nowhere. Probably watched a cartoon or a show. Mine stuck for, how long is that now? 35 years, and his stuck for 32 years, and his stuck for 2 hours. So I'm still good friends with him. It's my buddy Brian Lee. So he's still here, the CEO of a credit union here. But he made it stick. So my teacher embraced it, all of the school embraced it, and I've been Sumo literally. My wife that's the problem. She knew me as Sumo, so my wife today still calls me Sumo. My kids know me as Sumo. So I professionally, I don't necessarily go by Sumo, but at home and in church and the church I go to, everyone calls me Sumo, and they make mistakes and do some official things in the church and mistakenly call me Sumo. So anyway, it's sticking, unfortunately.
Doesn't sound like you're shaking it anytime soon. And you know what? It sounds like Brian's a great friend. I mean, what are friends for if not to prepare you for like very difficult things in your life? And so of course he would want to have you go through your life, with a challenge like that. So you probably owe him lunch and dinner and a lot more than that. So glad to have you on. Tell us a little bit more kind of about your past. So, I mean, since 2003, again, coming up on 20 years in the bonding business, did you do anything before that? I mean, like you said, have you kind of been born into it, or what has been your path? And, what was before, what's happened since 2003, and what are you doing now, or what are you doing today?
So Austin, I had ambitions just like every kid. I wanted to be an orthodontist. I had a sister who worked for one. So when I was growing up, I saw the success that he actually is our orthodontist now for my kids. But I saw the success those guys had, and I thought, and I was never attracted to teeth. But in talking to this gentleman when I was in high school, there's such a business aspect to orthodontics, and his branding was beautiful, and his office was beautiful, and everyone in there was happy and well groomed and looked. And he still has a very similar practice today, and even beyond that. But man, I love that side of it. And I kind of had a disease when I was younger, not a real disease, but I would walk into a tire shop or like a furniture store or a yogurt shop or wherever it was, and for some reason I would immediately judge. Everyone makes a judgment. I wouldn't say I like this place or I don't like this. I would think when I was young, 12 years old, as far back as I remember, I could do this better. And there's some things I knew I couldn't do. So for example, my nickname's Sumo. I'm a chubby guy. When I see a marathon runner who runs 4 a year, I go, I can't do that. And so but it's funny, I walked in that orthodontics office, I thought I could do this better. And so that's what motivated me to want to be an orthodontist. So I stuck with that, served a mission for my church, came home, and hung out. I had a couple of small jobs doing different things, but I got really interested in like branding and design. But I had an opportunity. My father owned an iteration of this company. It was a different legal name, but yeah, he had a different type of business we have today. But he introduced me and gave me a job while I was going to school. Like you said earlier, couriering bonds. So taking these legal documents to the contractors that he bonded. And I did that through school. I had a short time in insurance where I worked with a company called Southwest Risk Management and LeBaron and Carroll for a very short time. I worked there, and I had a small, medium-sized book of business writing insurance for contractors and my clients, but all at the same time developing a bond book. I guess I'll talk about that a little bit. What is bonding? And this should be the shortest part of the podcast because it's boring. It's the most boring thing. But so, bonding is as simple as when you see like on the side of a truck, licensed, bonded, insured. That's bonding, but that's not really what I did or my father did. There's two types of bonding. It's almost similar to like personalized insurance, so like auto, home, and commercial insurance. So the difference between the two now I actually call it, it's confusing, but commercial bonds are small bonds. So like a notary bond, a license bond for a contractor or an auto dealer. So those bonds guarantee the performance of an individual who's being licensed. That's a very broad definition, but there's thousands of bonds within that commercial bond space. And then there's contract bonds, which are bid, performance, payment bonds, some other supply bonds, subdivision development bonds, but construction-based bonds. And so for about 1993 to probably 2009, our agency or this agency or former iterations of this agency, we only wrote construction bonds. We did not touch the licensed bond insured small stuff. So I cut my teeth knowing large developers, getting to know how to read a financial statement. So insurance, the difference between bonding and insurance simply is when Austin gets in a wreck, how many wrecks? 100, 500 wrecks? When you
Depends on the day. Depends on the day. So yeah.
When you get your windshield replaced, the rock hits it, and you pay off that claim for $300 to the insurance company pays it. You don't have to, you're being indemnified, you're made whole. In bonding, I issue a bond to someone. If there's a claim against that bond, the insurance company or surety company, same thing usually, they pay the person who was damaged by that bond who made the claim. But the difference is, so they indemnify and make that person whole. But as a creditor almost, the surety company then comes after the person who purchased the bond. So a lot of people say, well, what does the bond do for me? It allows you to work. That's what it does. It's a regulation. It's a guarantee. It doesn't protect you necessarily. I mean, there's some ways, things we get into how it does protect you, but it really protects the person who you're working for. So insurance protects you and others, but it protects you against, calamity or catastrophe, accidents. Bonding is protects performance. Others against your malperformance or your dishonesty, even sometimes, some things you do wrong. That's what a bond does. So for example, if you were building a high school and the city of Mesa for that high school, you're building a brand new high school. If it's a $20 million high school, my client would be the contractor who's bidding to the city. The city would require bid bond, performance and payment bond. Bid bond guarantees what? That they're going to honor their bid. So when they turn it in, if they can't honor the bid and walk away, they can make a claim against that bid bond. Performance bond guarantees the performance of them adhering to the contract that they're engaged with the city on. And that's price, conditions, liquidated damages, warranties, all that is covered by the bond. And then the third one, probably I feel like the most important and where you see a lot of claims, is payment. So if I was a contractor, or if there was a contractor on the city Mesa job, and you put $1 million worth of steel or lumber or drywall on a job from a material supplier and they have it on credit, if you don't pay that material supplier, the material supplier can lien the city of Mesa's job. Well, no city or public entity or private owner wants their job liened, because if they paid the contractor and then they didn't pay the supplier, the bond steps in between that and says you can't lien the project. If you are not paid supplier, claim against the bond, we'll pay you, and then we'll, as a creditor, go after the contractor who didn't pay you, who were bond.
Well, and I'm so glad that you explained all of that, because I'm, not got too much ego to not say. I mean, I just had no idea. I had no idea that the work that we do, it doesn't require bonding at all. And backing up a little bit, I mean, it sounds like you've been just an entrepreneur since forever. You're just walking in, whether it's a candy shop or an ice cream shop. I think that I can do that. You just see opportunity everywhere you go. And so it's kind of seems like it's in the blood. Professionally, the way that we got linked up, at least from my perspective, was a couple of years ago. We did one of these deals that I was talking to you about, one of these pest acquisitions, and the work that they were more geared towards was commercial. Our bread and butter for a really long time has been residential, general pest or termite or whatever else, and this was more of a commercial company. And when the previous owner came to me and said, "Hey, we got to renew these bonds," I'm like, I've seen licensed, bonded, insured, right? But I don't really know what half of that is. And I was able to get in contact with, and I was pulling up our emails from a year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, where you guys or your firm was able to help with that. And so we have a bond, I guess, for that piece of the business or that part of the work. But, it's interesting too, not being bonded, that immediately disqualifies you from, if you're someone like me or another business owner, that'll immediately disqualify you from a lot of business, because they're not going to do, you think about, you are unable to do business without insurance, period, right? And in a lot of instances, although bonding may not be required for all of the jobs, some of the jobs do require that. And so you talk about peace of mind for not necessarily me, the business owner, but for that consumer to know, hey, if things go south or things aren't paid for or things aren't finished, right? There's some reparation there and there's some consideration there so that we can continue the project and get it done.
Perfect.
Does that sound about right? Fair enough?
You're exactly right. Whether it's a small license bond or if you're trying to enter, it's like a barrier of entry, whether you want to do construction or sell a car or be a notary, you have to provide a bond and get licensed properly. That's the small side. The big side is if pest control. We have a lot of pest control clients, and they're more geared differently than you just talked about. Like, let's say there was a job order contract from the city. That what that being is, the city awards a bulk of service that if, like, let's say that every school needs to have pest control in a city for 2 years. they don't want to have to hire individuals or hire one guy. And they want, when they pay Moxie or whoever it is, ABC Pest Control, they want to make sure that job's going to be done. So every public job that uses taxpayer money has to be bonded, depending on what state you're in, and federal over a certain amount, usually $10,000 to $15,000, anything over that. So if you bid a job to a city or the federal government, they would require you to get a bond. And
you got to have a bond.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they just want to make sure, I mean, they're more interested in just making sure that job is getting done, period, right? They just want it done. They just want it done.
And that you're a solvent company. I can't tell you how many calls we get from great clients of ours, but they're the first time into bonding, and it's a guy with just like the T-shirt on his back and a truck, and a hammer and some nails, and he just says, I want to get bonded. We help that person start and get bonded and start cutting their teeth in commercial bid, public bid arena, or the very experienced developer or contractor, that's in a position where they need multi-million-dollar, we call them bonding line of credit. So if you haven't caught that, insurance is guaranteeing against, hazards, risks, and it protects you. Bonding protects others, but it is a financial tool. It's more of like less like insurance, more like loans. And as you go through the process, people are like, what? I have to get 3 years financials. We have to have all this stuff. I got to sign basically like a line of credit, like it's called an indemnity agreement. That's similar to a bank. So the surety company is essentially a creditor. You never want them to be a creditor. That means you went into claim. But insurance are expected to have claims. Bonds are written expecting to never have a claim. So they don't ever want to see a claim. But they know insurance. If you're driving down the road, you're going to have a rock hit you. It's just an actuary's calculation. It's going to happen. Bonding, it should never happen. It's going to be malfeasance. It's going to be, financial distress. It's going to be something like so. So we try and underwrite, and so we do a lot of underwriting in-house, and we try and help mitigate against that. So that's bonding. We can stop talking about that. We can talk about because I wanted to be an orthodontist. I wanted to have whatever company. I didn't choose bonding, and sometimes if you ask my wife what I do, we've been married for 15 years. She doesn't. She'll say he bonds construction projects. I mean, and she knows a lot about it. It's just a boring subject that everyone needs and most companies have. Even like you said, I don't bond. Well, I look up Moxie Pest Control. I write a bond for Moxie. So everyone has bonding. Most companies need it. If you open a company, you have a utility bond. I mean, you have a notary bond in your office. I mean, there's bonds all over the place. It's like insurance, but nobody really pays attention to it as much.
So Taylor, what do you got? Let's talk about your company, right? Let's talk about bonding solutions. There's hundreds or maybe even thousands of different types of bonds. What is the riches are in the niches? And so do you guys focus on 1, 5? I mean, you guys probably write them all. I mean, you probably are capable of doing that, but what do you focus on and why?
So I'll tell you, it kind of ties back to me, that the chubby kid in the yogurt shop who said they can sell this yogurt better, right? Sumos walk in. So my father focused on, he was in banking, and lots of bankers and accountants trans over to the financial aspect of bonding. A lot of insurance agents don't do bonding, unless it's a really small bond, just because there's a lot of time that goes into every bond you do and relationships there. Just different than insurance. I got out of insurance too. I didn't mention that. I got out of insurance probably 11 years ago, 12 years ago. Sold my book of business, got out of it, and just focused 100% on bonding. So, but I lost my train. Oh yeah, okay. So the difference is what we do, what makes us different, or what we focus on. And like you said, the niches we focus on we call ourselves a boutique bonding shop. We only took really large developers and contractors, subcontractors, helped them get bonds that were, help them grow beyond where they want to go. Talk to them about where they want to be. So conversations like this, talking about growth, what are best practices financially, then we can go. That's really boring stuff, but it's really helpful for me as a business owner. What are best practices to grow a company? And that's conversations that we have with our contractors every day. Because when we write a bond for somebody, the surety company actually becomes a partner on the project. It's a 3-way relationship. The owner of the project, the contractor, the surety backing them up. So doing that, we're very interested in continuity. Does, Austin's an owner of Moxie. What's your life insurance look like? What happens if, the wizard behind the curtain passes, heaven forbid, those types of things. Financial planning, we don't do that, but we help bring right accountants and financial planners in, banking relationships, all that. We want to see our contractors, when we pick them up, in 4 years from now, they're in a better place equity-wise. They make more money personally and as a company. They're making good decisions for longevity and disability. So we do that. That's what we focused on. So that's the construction side. We help those very involved. And my father got involved in that years ago. And in 1993, 1994, I think is when he started. He left which is FDIC today. He was director for that, the RTC. He started that in 1993, ran it forever. I came home from my mission in 2003, couriered bonds. And then just like the fat kid in the yogurt shop, I went in and said, Dad, we write all these bonds. Why aren't we writing the license bonds? And he said, they're garbage. They're $300 to $1,000 in premium. We make a couple of $100. Why do you want to write them? I said, well, why are competitors of ours hiring 30 people or 10 people to run these small, we call them commercial shops, the small, personal lines, the small stuff? And so I saw that while I already had a contractor book of business like my father. I'd sold my insurance book. This is probably 2009, 2008, and the crash had just happened in the construction market. I said, let's start writing these small bonds. He said, no. He said, there's no way. And he let us do it for about a month, and we just went all out. And we ended up writing quite a bit of revenue to our agency. I think $13,000 in revenue in 1 month, and worked a lot of time on it. And we ended up looking at a model that is very similar to your industry, just like the pest control, alarm sales, solar sales, starting off small, giving some incentives for sales, and just having, young kids come in and help us write it. That's how we started out. That model has changed drastically now. And it's, we give people a good career here. And the reason why, and I'm just going to say this, and I'm sure you deal with this in your industry, but it's in the summer sales industry. There's a lot of entitlement. Everyone who's in it wants to be an owner eventually, everyone who's in it. So I'd hire someone coming in that immediately asks, like, well, when I want to do all my business on the golf course and I don't want to work that hard. I want to work in little bursts. I want to do 4 hours of work and then goof off the rest of the day. And I want a Breitling watch and a flat brimmed hat. And I want, anyways. So not disparaging that model at all, because it works for sure. But for my industry, it didn't really translate. We tried that for a couple of years and it did work. We had some success, but I noticed that I wrote those, 1 month of bonds for my dad. And then my dad said, well, hey, this is yours. I said, Dad, I want to start a separate company. I started a separate company. We set up a partnership agreement because he said he didn't want to be a part of it. I made him be an owner in it, and he was.
You're like, if I'm going down, Dad, you're going down with me. You're a partner.
And it was the other way around. I never felt risk in it because it seemed like a simple thing. But let me tell you why I won't go into too much detail on this because there's some sticky stuff on it legally. But I saw what made me want to write them is that I wrote a demolition contractor, right, for the construction bond. And he came in, he said, hey, can you write my license bond? I said, how much are you paying? And this is, mind you, we don't write these small bonds because they're garbage. He said, I'm paying $14,000 a year. I said, what? For a license bond? And I got in there, and the company that wrote it was a local company around here. They're a bonding agency, I guess, but they only write the small bonds. They were adding fees and some other things on it that we just saw. It was rife for disruption. There was some stuff, whether it's legal or not, that they were doing. I don't want to argue that, but they were overcharging the client. They weren't giving a good service. And I just said, this needs to be disrupted a little bit. And we did. I mean, we came in and we wrote lots of business in the first 3 to 5 years and we made a little splash in the industry, and that people didn't like it because we were coming in and writing the bonds for cheaper because we had this big business already that existed that supported us and our agency. So we can come in and write these other side of the business. Since that happened, there's been a lot of agency. That was probably in 2012 where we really started to see traction. A lot of people copied us, and there's a lot of people who did that. So when we started off as a boutique bonding agency that only picked and choose our contractors we work with, now we have we still have that side that's very strong. It's grown a ton over the last 10 to 12 years. But we have another side of our agency, Austin, that is it's less boutique and it's come one, come all. We'll have a solution for you. We'll figure out if you have, a 400 credit score and you've had 5 bankruptcies, we can find a solution to write that bond. Which before we would just throw you out of the agency, 15 years ago.
Well, and so let's talk about that for a second, because and I want to talk about the evolution of your company and what's happened. And I think that listeners have heard, I certainly have heard, that there's been just a lot of different, even before you were there, just iterations of, what Bonding Solutions is today and what it was previously. And it's continuing to evolve. But one thing that you said last week to me when we were talking, I like to talk about employees. And I think that any business book that you read says, look, pay people more and hire less, right? And it sounds like that's been, more of your direction the last perhaps several years, but it wasn't always that way. Could you maybe speak to that? What's great about that, or where are you in that process, or how is that?
I would hire people, Austin, and I would pay them to find the killers or the lions out there, not the sheep. I would say, all right, I'm going to hire Austin. We're going to pay him, $1 over minimum wage, but we're going to give him the most incredible way to make money on top of that. And it did work. In fact, I have a junior partner here at my agency that we found him that way. He's an animal. He's great. He's great sales, great at being focused, works hard, and he's a great partner to have. But in that process, we'd find the people who weren't good at sales. But here was what I didn't realize is that I was paying people so little with a high promise of making money that when that wasn't realized, you either had dissatisfaction or. So what we did is we eliminated that. We just went in at salary based, and we paid people based on their qualifications existing. If you find somebody hiring like Russian roulette, right? You don't know what they're going to be like. Everyone's going to resume and interview well and do all that, but you have to weigh out in the first 3 to 5 months their performance. And so we just started doing that. It's more work on our end and training and really trying to before we say, all right, come in, go for it. We don't have a lot of risk in it. We're not paying you a ton if you don't perform. If you do perform, we pay you a ton. That was nice. It's similar to like the sales model, right? Where people go out and every door they knock on, they sell. That was the idea behind it, right? I have family in a related insurance, but it's not like a big insurance company. They're very transactional, and he paid very low, and I paid more, a little higher than that. I realized that sometimes you had that satisfaction. You could find some killers out there, but most of the time, 9 out of 10, most people couldn't make that curve. They couldn't find the sales curve, and so I still, for years, probably 3 or 4 years, decided that's the way I wanted to do it. And then I realized that there are people who aren't that A-type personality, and they aren't that, but they still have incredible value. So I looked at an organization in showing up to do work and in maybe their ability to learn an industry, while they're not, and also the transactional bonds, there's not that much sales in it. It's a lot of processing. It's a lot of multitask. And we found that an organizational person can be just as successful or sometimes more successful when that's their strength than those A-type personalities. And as you know some of those hot sales guys, they're a mess. They are not organized. They show up, they can kill on sales, but the backlog of mess they leave behind us sometimes isn't great. So my least favorite part of my job and my favorite part of my job is the people I work with. It's hard to hire. We're either chronically overstaffed or we're chronically understaffed. It's just there's never, maybe we experience one day a year where we're like, man, we got it. Everything's perfect, but in the ebbs and flows in business, we're either hiring or we feel like I've overhired. So I prefer the overhire position than feeling like we're, grinding our gears here and everybody's getting burnt out because they're doing so much. So, because I feel like we're growing at that point. We have a reason to hire. So again, another thing is too, and I want to make sure they don't hear me, but my office, because they're here, I generally like to overpay. When I say that, overpay, and then I also, be calculated in how you hire, offer a good income to the person you're hiring, but then and this is where I'm weak, is be quick to fire as well, which is a very hard thing for me. So as an owner, I didn't sign up for it when I bought the agency 7 years ago, and so I'm not the best at that. I have people here who support me who are better at it. So, but yeah, quick to fire, selective in your hiring, and then remunerate very well. I don't know if that's what in your training you felt the same way, Austin.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear you say a lot of those things. I think the other piece of that, I know that this case study exists. I haven't found it yet, but if you're going with the lower wage model, and I want to know, okay, if you pay an employee $10 an hour, which I'm pretty sure is illegal in all 50 states, but just because it's a round number, if you pay that person $10 an hour, what is the managerial oversight? How much time? So at $10 an hour, is that person's manager spending an hour a day with them? And I would think that the correlation is then at $12 an hour, then how much time or managerial oversight does that take? And then at 15, then how much? And so I'm really, if anyone listening or if I'd really love to understand a little bit more of like what that correlation is, because I think that there's a sweet spot. And it's like, look, you can do the low wage type model, but I think that you are going to have a lot of headaches. There's skills that aren't there that may need to be, or that don't exist that you need to develop or teach, right? And so, like you say, paying higher salaries, perhaps they have more education, formal or otherwise, or other certificates, or they're a fast learner, right? If they weren't, they wouldn't be able to command that type of wage or salary. So definitely, I mean, that's been a way that you've seen your organization scale, grow, evolve. So it sounds like you've been in ownership or at least more full-time involved with the company the last 10 years or so, and ownership the last several as well. How else has the company evolved? We talked about employees. We've talked about you and your dad, and you thinking you had a great idea, and him saying maybe not so much junior, but you proved that model, and that's going well. What else and how else has the company evolved?
So again, my dad kind of stuck to that. I mean, he's an interesting partner. He was very removed. Never got in the transactional side. Never got involved in it. When I say never, I mean you can ask my partner here. He worked with my dad. He probably talked to him 10 times. In the years that he worked with them. So my dad was very focused on his niche book of clients, just as he always has been. And so I purchased him about 7 years ago. Our agency is involved not only in the way we pay employees, and the way we. I would rather have fewer, better partners here. We want to focus on championing an individual and helping them make that higher figure income and help and grow people smaller. So I used to hire a lot of return missionaries for a church and all that, and I still do. I mean, I still would, but I actually at this point want to hire someone who has long-term employment. If I find out they've been at 6 places in 2 years, that's my number one turnoff. So we've answering your question, we've grown in the way we hire people and pay people, in the way in literally the last 8 years, it's flipped completely on its head about 7 years ago. So we champion people for career growth here, less transactional employment. The other one is processes, and I almost say that with like a pit in my stomach, because we're always trying to better our processes here. We're investing a lot of money right now in automation, just here internally. No one will see it on the outside. Automating a lot of our processes internally. It's a very heavy paper flow that we deal with here. A lot of information and data entry. So we're automating some of that, and that's expensive, but it's a part that I didn't think we'd ever have to be that focused on. But in doing so, if you put $100,000 into automation, how much work can you eliminate for your employees, and where can they focus on that? So our motto this year in a meeting we had was, 2021, we're focused on growth. I mean, we're always focused on growth, but this is a year for us to grow in a unique way. We want to do it in different ways. I want to talk about something that just popped in my head.
Yeah, please do.
We focus on not only being different. So a lot of our competitors, they're not focused on automation. We're a bonding agency. This has maybe probably been the boringest podcast because we are bonding, right? We're a subset of an industry. We're a niche company. So niche, however you say that. So we decided even within our scope, we want to be different. So have a good logo, have a great website, put a lot of money into advertising, which people weren't doing for a long time or doing a poor job of. Really focusing on processes and automation. I mean, these things are things that, it makes us a little bit different. But one thing that we really did was, and I spent a lot of time doing it when I was starting this side of the agency, is I would test our competitors. So like if I were in pest control, I would if I wanted to compete against Moxie or another, Terminix or any of these big blue skies, I would hire them. I would hire them, see the experience on payment. What can we do? Did the technician follow up with me? Did they ask me for a review? What are they getting in social media? Whatever I want to focus on. Like if I even do it today, if I want to know, how my biggest competitor is after I pay for a bond, what do they do? Or for a service, how do they follow up with us? What's their client? And it was dismal. Nobody was doing anything. So we took other industries. Whether it's construction or pest control, I'll look at the coolest industries. I mean, I just ordered some water online, and it's probably from the coolest water company. It looks like a beer can, but they have the coolest branding. We have in our office.
And it's water. And it's water. It's the most readily available natural resource in the entire world. It's water.
Their customer experience is awesome. So I've actually taken a couple of things from this. They're not a competitor. They're a completely different industry, right? They're a water company that doesn't sell at any stores. They just sell direct by shipping.
So if you can differentiate in the water space or beverage space, I mean, goodness gracious, right? You can certainly do that in bonding, insurance, whatever else, right?
This is going to be the most cliche guy for a mentor, but it's Steve Jobs. He was on an interview, like in a random, I remember he said that he reverse engineers an experience, and not many companies do that. He puts himself, all right, I'm the consumer. The company just touched me. What am I feeling? And then I want this feeling to persist in a customer. He reverse engineers that on how to do that. And so we've tried to do that. So in our trainings, I'll say things like that. All right, hey, we want our customer to feel like they found the Pandora's box of bonding. They had the easiest experience. In fact, we actually we want them to think about us positively, but then if it's transactional, to never think about us again until it renews the next year, because we want it to be that painless for them. So we try and build a model, reverse engineer that. And that would apply to pest control. When you're thinking, if there's a problem on a job, how do our technicians, how do our sales guys solve those problems with the customer's response in mind that you desire, and how you reverse engineer that to get that. That's difficult to do, but the big one though, I felt like that where I've learned the most, hands down, is from my successful competitors who I respect a lot, and I don't disparage the ones that are doing a good job. So I look at those guys. I like to test them. Like, what are they doing? Whether that means, it sounds silly, but to have of a friend, or so I don't ever do it personally, but a friend or somebody else, a trusted client, purchase their service or go and do what they're doing, and then just taking an audit of what they're doing. It's not stealing by any means. I don't do any of it. I respect their business, but I like to learn from my competitors, and then figure out what did they do wrong and to be different. The other one too is, and this applies to every industry, especially service industries, which we are essentially a service industry. We're not going to homes providing a product that's pretty service oriented, is touching the customers in the appropriate way, and then customer follow up. I feel like people don't focus on it enough. I have a great pest control company right now. They don't follow up with us. They don't ask us for surveys. You don't want to annoy your customer, but for example, I get criticized a lot for phone calls because they're kind of archaic. No one answers their phone, right? We stopped it for 3 months. We saw a 22% decline in our renewal rate.
Wow.
The phone calls mean something, and not everybody's, a millennial or a 30-something-year-old person who only wants texted. A lot of our clients still fax us to us. They want that phone call. The problem we run into is we make a phone call and they want to talk to us for 15 minutes. So we've jumped into that, and we want to touch our clients. We want to let them know. So when they think about, an obscure subset of an industry, bonding, when they need that, there's nothing else that would come to their mind. So they're a lifetime customer. And I can share this. A competitor of ours moved from the agency retail side to the insurance company side, right? He's a very, very successful man in our industry. He told me when I first started this about 11 years ago, this transactional side of our agency, he said that the renewal rate, which is like the customer retention, he says you're going to probably be in the 30 to 40% range. We're like in the 85, 95% range. it's because he didn't have the best practices. He's not measuring his competitors. He's not focusing on being different. He's not being different. He focuses on programs and business. And, something that I see is we talked about this on the phone the other day. We're focused on acquiring businesses, growing, right? There's lots of different ways to do that. But one way that I like the best, I'm 39, bald, stressed, and a business owner, but I still feel young in my industry, and there's a lot of older people just running, working. So what's the best way, to get past any program? Work out of it. You just got to put forth best practices that you're supposed to be doing with your industry, and work. And what creates value? I mean, you always hear about these deals like, oh, so-and-so, John Doe, they sold their company for this much money, and, it must be great for him. But what they don't realize is he almost had a brain aneurysm 5 times in the past 10 years building it, lost all his hair, he's stressed. But now that he got paid millions of dollars for his company, or even if he didn't sell, they look at him, pull up in his brand new truck or Tesla, and they say, oh, it must be nice to be John. They don't realize what he's put in, that the hard work, right? So I look at that, and I think, Austin what is that? Like, why is a large national insurance brokerage like Gallagher Group or buying my competitors? It's because they recognize the value in just the grind. They're going to grow through acquisition because of their financial and their grind that they've done over 50, 60, 100 years, however long they've been in business. They're not in a position to buy a company like mine or a smaller or bigger company. That's good. There's nothing against that. We do that too. We bought agencies in the past. But
Taylor, I got to hop in for just a second. I like all of the things that you're talking about, but specifically with competitors. I mean, competition is so great. High tide raises all boats type of thing, and there is always someone, some way, somehow doing something, doing at least one thing. Even the guy that just got in the business or the gal that just got in the business, they're doing one thing better than you are, for sure. A few years ago, we kind of wound up in like the operations type business, the contact center type business. And I'm like, man, I've never done that. I have no idea. And so thankfully there's Google, which will just tell you everything that you want to know. Right. And so we just started, and thankfully there's actually GoDaddy, which is one of the largest companies here in town and runs one of the largest contact centers, operations centers. And so what we did, because we didn't have the answers that we needed, we reached out to them and said, hey, we want to come down and visit with your executive team and have a tour and tell us how to do business in a better way. And they're like, yeah, I mean, we just don't do that. We're like, of course you do. You don't know who we are. Of course you're going to do it for us. And they said, okay. And they did. And so we literally spent like 4 hours with 4 or 5 members of our team, with some of their top people, walking us through, doing the, just showing us everything, answering all of our questions. And so I think people would be surprised to know how willing people are to be able to help and contribute. And so, your competitors may or may not do that, but there's other people in your space that have established these systems, right? Have established these processes, and there is no need to reinvent the wheel when it already exists. And so it sounds like you guys are just kind of catapulting into the future with a lot of the things that you're learning from people in parallel industries, the same industry, to be able to make your business go.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, people love to give advice, right? And it's flattering. If you called me on the phone and said, Taylor, hey, we've worked together in the past. I want your advice on this. What do you do with this type of marketing? I'm a flood. I'm like, thank you. I am the smartest person in the world. Yeah. Flattering, when you ask that advice.
The rest of your calendar is clear. You've got 6 hours for lunch. You know what I mean?
And obviously a competitor, I'd be careful. We're very careful about what we share with competitors. But we do want to, there's not a secret sauce to what I do. And it's just sharing with people best practices. What do you got to do? Just work. Come in, go to work. And when I say we want to test competitors, we don't want to test our competitors. It's great to learn from them. I like to measure where the market's at. I want to see what people are doing. Where are we falling short? We have our list of where we fall short, which is sometimes too long. And then we're trying to correct those. But we also look at competitors and we say, wow, they're falling short there. Or, oh my gosh, why aren't we doing this? And there's been some times when I'm literally sick to my stomach when I see something a competitor's doing because it's so flipping good. I'm like, oh my gosh. Because when we first started in this industry, I don't want to say to disrupt it, because we don't consider ourselves a disruptor in this industry, but to kind of better our position as an agency and our customers' experience, it was easy. When I say easy, it was hard work, but there wasn't a lot of people doing. I mean, when we launched our first,
the bar was so low. The bar was so low.
Jumped up here. We have a great website. We have automation, a little bit of automation. We're using a CRM in the bonding industry. Simple practices that were already in other industries. We just applied it to a niche industry. But now, you have, Fortune 500 companies stepping into our space, buying little agencies, literally Fortune 500 companies. And they are seeing that it's profitable, it's a good industry, it's niche, and they're going in and they're investing, easily $400,000, $500,000 in automation. So it's just funny how it catches up. And when we go see that, I go, I can't compete right now with that. I have to, let's retool and see how we can compete with that, or even if we need to. And so those are some, those are probably the funnest part of my job. So there's the day-to-day, the boring part I talked about in the beginning, which is the part I enjoy the most, which is the client interaction, writing the bonds, solving problems, what I do for a living. But second, and close to that, is innovating, managing business. If you had to ask me what my biggest challenge is, hands down, employees. When I say that, we are so blessed here to have a team that's been refined and grown, and we have such a good, so right now I'd say, knock on wood, not a huge problem, but it's tough when you have somebody who whether has a personal problem or a professional problem and having to address that. That's something that I didn't. So as we grow, I will definitely have an HR investment, because that's not my strength. It's not. I have no problem hiring. Firing is hard for me, but managing employees also, when you're focused on so many other things. So hopefully our automation, and that's our goal, is I don't want to retire. I don't want to sell my company tomorrow. I want to be in this for a long time, but I do want to be able to step away from some of the tasks that are very time intensive, like HR, and I want to focus on the things I enjoy, which is innovation, client experience, and my current book of business with my clients, and helping them. I think in the next 10 years in the surety industry, there's going to be a lot of change, a lot of catch up to other industries, but then a lot of innovation, and I want to be a part of that side. So rather than focusing on an argument at work or a problem that's going on with employees or hiring and firing, I want to be able to do that. So the development of process, hopefully, it's hard to measure how much that's going to pay off in developing automation, client experience tools that provide them quick feedback. One thing I can use, and I can share this because it's nothing, but like we use a service that utilizes texting a lot, right? A lot of service industries do that, where your client gets, you're John will be there at 12:41, p.m., or whatever, and thank you. Hey, how was your experience? That's more like a service-based industry. We start applying a service like that in our industry to actually two services that are connected. And I can't share with the exact numbers, but it blew, when I say blew my mind, it was fairly expensive, like $1,000 to $1,300 a month, but it blew my mind. The return, I had no idea. There's a couple of things, every now and then you're surprised by something, but
and that surprised you.
Because we're not in someone's home. Somebody's buying notary bond online, but it's just almost a compounding return because people are so happy. And then, it's like Coca-Cola ad on the Super Bowl. How do they measure that? I mean, it's just like in the ether kind of how people respond. It's not like they're paying, somebody's clicking and buying. They're watching it and then they're expected to behave to go buy it later or to champion that brand. It's the same thing with us. That texting and whatnot, we don't see immediate return because it's already existing client, but the ancillary business that's come from it has just been mind-blowing.
If people want to be communicated with the way that they want to be communicated with, not the way the business wants to communicate with them, and if that makes that more of a seamless, smooth transition, and it's just ease of doing business, right? Then where are they going to do? Where are they going to do business? They're going to do, if they want to text, they're going to do it with where they can text it in.
Awesome. If I were your best friend, I probably am your best friend now, and you and your wife went out to eat at the best restaurant in the world, it just barely opened. That's like, at least for me, Sumo, I'm a chubby guy. I love to eat, but like, I want to share that with people. And so that experience, if I go to a restaurant, we just went to Bourbon and Bones, which is like a steakhouse in Scottsdale. They opened one in Gilbert. It was phenomenal, by the way. So you should go there. It's great. Plug for Bourbon and Bones, but it's expensive. It's like a Ruth Chrissy type of Fleming type of a price point. My wife and I went there with some friends. I've told like 5 people about it, and it's because of the experience I had with the owner of that restaurant who was there, came to our table, and some other good things they did for us. It was just a great experience. And I thought that's a good when somebody finds something they like, they love to be that advice giver or that person who's like, dude. So like if we write an auto dealer bond, right, which is a bond we write a lot of. If we write an auto dealer bond in Texas or Florida or whatever, and we do a great job for somebody, we save them $3,000 on their horrible bond they had with another agency. It's amazing how many people they tell. And if we have a great client relationship, so some of those texting or personal touch services, phone calls, other things like that, automation that we have, that's where it's coming to play, because they feel it's like you're reinforcing that they were smart for coming to us, and they feel like this authority, and that's wonderful. So it's like, hey, you now have the best pest control service, and you know that because you're smart because you bought it. Now you have no more, you have the best approach to bugs in your home. How can you help us out? How will you help Austin grow in this area? And that's the kind of, in a more nuanced way, we ask those questions to our clients, and they become a source of authority now. Because all of our clients are pretty much business owners, they're businesses. They like to feel like, hey, I know you know people in this space and you're friends with other auto dealers or contractors. How can you help us grow? I mean, we love working with your company. We only want to work with people like you. How can you? So those kinds of questions have just been invaluable. So I just say for us, innovation, willing to change the little things have been, I'm always surprised at how sometimes championing a little process is the best practice. It's like a diet. I've been on a perpetual diet for 39 years. But, with what the secret sauce is to losing weight? Calorie intake, calorie output, and watching how much sugar and fat you put in your body. So there's no secret sauce to it. So doing those best practices in a business, it's the same thing. Show up, go to work, focus on innovation. We call it being different and testing our competitors. Those are kind of some mantras we have here at our agency. So those are things that we do all the time. And the levels of success can be affected by the economy, where we're at, people's spending habits, where business is at, public bid procurement for our contract side. But if we're always applying, I have a good example. I have a good friend who owns a company very similar in your space, kind of. And when the pandemic hit in March, they pulled all their pay-per-click, right? They pulled it all out. They stopped paying pay-per-click, and they spend a hefty amount. And we do part of our agency. We do all, direct mail, phone calls, but online we have a presence as well. And I said, if there was 200,000 clicks for the term pest control a month, pre-pandemic, previous March, there was 200,000. Well, now this month is only 100,000 because people are scared, they're staying home, they're not spending money. Let's say we did X amount of percentage of those conversions last year. I want that to translate this year. In fact, we're going to double our spend in that month. We decided to double down in the month of March and April and May and June and July, all the way through the year. And he said to pull back, and he came to me and basically said, wasn't a great choice to pull out. So I think like committing to a process, SEO, pay-per-click, direct mailers, you're going to have failures. But if you commit to best practices, just like a diet, some months your weeks you're gonna eat really well and maybe have one cheat meal, and you're gonna step on the scale and you lost no weight. And you're like, what did I do? I lifted every day, I ran, I ate like a champion, but you don't stop doing it. And that's my whole point. A lot of my competitors and a lot of people I see in different industries, they try SEO for 2 months and you're like, oh my gosh, you shouldn't have even tried it. I mean, you might as well.
Never gonna work. Never gonna work. You gotta keep after it.
Yeah, direct mailers, don't do them once. Do them 15 times. And in a year, you'll know, hey, it's giving a return, but the return's X. And people also, this is something I find too, they don't analyze their own effectiveness in processing those leads or in receiving those. I have some people who, they get these leads in and they don't use the Salesforce model, which is like contact or Infusionsoft, well, what used to be Infusionsoft, where you contact people within 5 minutes of contacting us. That's our goal here. Nobody does that. And they'll measure their success. Well, hey, these leads aren't converting. They're not converting to sales. And I feel like the people on the other end, I feel so bad for them because they want to say, Austin, well, how bad is your company sucking at processing leads? What are your internal controls on those? So that's the process part that we really try and champion. And we are perpetually always behind. There's never a way to get on top of that, but we're always trying to innovate and do better. So.
Well, and you mentioned, Infusionsoft, or formerly Infusionsoft, now Keep, and there's a lot of types of platforms out there like that. But Clay Mask over there, and we probably have. I feel like I have 50 friends that work there and have worked there. That's also a company that's come a really long way to be able to help business owners measure the efficacy or how efficient either salespeople are, and a lot of the customer mapping and the customer journey. The marketing begins before a customer is a customer. It happens all while they're a customer, and then when they're not a paying customer, they're a prospect again. Like it never stops, right? You're continually marketing to them, giving them offers, giving them reasons to continue to do business with you. Sumo, as we round this thing out, how for you to stay relevant, like where do you turn? I mean, have there been people that have been influential in your life? Are you a book reader? Do you listen to podcasts? Where do you go to stay sharp and relevant, to be able to provide value to your customers, your team, and to be able to help develop them and take, bonding solutions where it needs to go in the next decade?
That's a good question. I obviously love podcasts. I don't know if you've heard of 37 Signals or Basecamp. If you've read any books by that group, they're great. I'm not a book reader. I'm a book listener. So I listen to books on tape a lot, or Audible type of stuff. But I would say, for me, I live my life by looking at what I want to be like. I look up to people, whether it's in my industry or outside of my industry. I look at peers. I look at people who I want to be like, and I just love having conversations with them. So like you said, reaching out to others, asking them their questions that would be relevant to my industry. That's where I've probably found a lot of my best. When I first started in this industry, there was a gentleman, I can say his name, Paul Boley. He worked for the Hartford Insurance. He's now a pretty big, got promoted to a management role there. But I said, hey, I know how to spread a financial. I want to know what you do on your end, similar to Google. And he says, come to my office. I'll white out all the names on all your competitors' documents. I shouldn't say this, but he basically made a dummy file for me, and he put me in an office that says, underwrite this. I don't underwrite bonds for sure. I sell bonds as an agent. And he did that for me when I was very young. I was in my 20s. And those types of relationships are more than invaluable. I don't know what the next step beyond that is. If I took that away, that experience, it just taught me so much that it's invaluable. So I look at those. So I like to ask questions to, like, for example, suppliers for pest control stuff. I want to ask them, hey, what do you see other people doing? Are we buying as much as them? What can we do better? That's where I think my sources of inspiration, education come from, which is, if you want to call it on-the-job training, we'll call it on-the-job training, but kind of on-the-job training where you're in rubber meeting the road. I do like listening to like podcasts or like Garyvee. Those guys aren't my favorite. I look at, what does Garyvee do for a living? I'll tell you what he does. He runs a podcast. He has a podcast. He has Instagram. He's on every social media platform, and he sells product to people like me for, his company, his advertising company is successful. He had parents who own a winery. I just never understand why people love him so much. He's just a good speaker. So I don't love those self-help type books as much as other people do, or self-help broadcasts. I like industry specific. This podcast that you have, I like to hear other people. I mentioned AFP construction. I like listening to I think it's Brad just talking on there. It's not applicable to my industry necessarily. What he does, all those construction related. It's because he's a custom home builder, but I like to listen to other entrepreneurs and business owners.
Business principles are business principles.
Yeah.
You're in bonding, but you're really in the people business. You know what I mean? And
I'm applying practices for a water company I just bought water from. So yeah, I enjoy that. So working with my clients and my customers and my peers in my industry, and then also connected services and other business owners. That's where I say my source of education comes in. So, but yeah.
No, you've rocked it, man. Sumo, you've been a great guest. Thanks so much for being on the show. If people need to connect with you, if they have either questions about anything that you've said, or if they need to be bonded, what is the best way for people to get a hold of you? Cell, email, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat? How do people get a hold of you?
All of the above. Taylor@bondingsolutions.com, our website. You can contact us on that if you need a bond. Bondingsolutions.com. But I think reaching out and just having a conversation, again, connecting, and having that relationship with clients. So if they have a question, if they need us, reach out to me directly, please, as the owner, and we'll put you in contact with the right person. So.
Hey, very cool. Sumo, thank you so much for your time. I know that it's super limited. Thank you for everything that you've shared with all of the guests. This has been super insightful and meaningful for me, not just on the bonding side. For me, it's actually all of the other stuff that you shared. And so thank you so much for being on. If you're listening, subscribe, and we'll catch you next time when we drop more shows. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.